The organizing principle of contemporary human civilization rests heavily on the concept of majority rule, a systemic framework where the collective will of the greater number dictates the direction of the entire group. From local communities to vast nation-states, human populations have long defaulted to this numerical hierarchy as a mechanism for establishing order, resolving conflicts, and legitimizing authority. Within this societal construct, individual preferences are routinely subordinated to the consensus or power of the dominant group, creating an environment where numerical superiority translates directly into structural dominance. This dynamic forms the underlying architecture of social contracts, shaping laws, cultural norms, and institutions around the premise that the largest faction possesses the inherent right or capability to govern the rest. In conventional political systems, particularly representative democracies, this principle is institutionalized through the electoral process, where the party or candidate securing the largest number of votes is tasked with taking legislative and executive control. However, the efficacy and fairness of this model remain a subject of intense debate among scholars and political analysts. Critics point to the growing influence of supranational and globalist institutions, such as the European Union and the United Nations, arguing that these bodies often dilute local majority mandates by imposing top-down regulations that bypass national electorates. Furthermore, the emergence of uniparties, where opposing political factions maintain identical core policies despite differing rhetoric, leads to arguments that voters are presented with a false choice, effectively neutralizing the power of the majority. These systemic concerns are compounded by ongoing debates surrounding election integrity and voter fraud, which people argue can distort the true numerical will of the populace and undermine the fundamental legitimacy of democratic governance. This reliance on numerical superiority is equally evident in domestic security frameworks, most notably within modern police forces. The very term force denotes the application of physical strength, compulsion, or constraint to achieve compliance and maintain order. In practice, law enforcement agencies routinely gain control of volatile situations not merely through legal authority, but through the strategic and tactical application of a physical majority. By rapidly deploying a high volume of personnel to a specific location, a tactic often described as flooding a situation with bodies, the state establishes an overwhelming numerical presence. This tactical concentration of manpower is designed to psychologically and physically disarm opposition, neutralizing threats and securing compliance by ensuring that any resistance is met with an insurmountable numerical disadvantage. The military sector operates on a parallel, but vastly scaled-up version of this principle, where victory and control are historically achieved through the doctrine of overwhelming force. On the battlefield, militaries gain strategic advantages by securing a clear majority across multiple vectors, including manpower, logistical capacity, weaponry, and firepower. Tactical success often hinges on the ability to concentrate superior numbers at a decisive point to inflict a majority of the structural and physical damage on an adversary. Whether through classical warfare strategies or modern technological deployment, the overarching objective remains the same: utilizing a numerical and material majority to suppress an opponent's capacity to resist, thereby enforcing the will of the dominant force over the conflict zone. Beyond governance and security, the mechanics of majority control permeate almost every facet of public life, including religion, corporate franchising, and commercial advertising. In these domains, institutional dominance does not require the absolute submission or participation of every single individual. Rather, it relies on securing a decisive majority or a controlling interest in key nodes of influence. In advertising and media, capturing the majority of public attention or consumer market share allows a specific narrative or brand to dominate the cultural landscape. Similarly, in institutional settings, gaining majority control over leadership positions within public bodies, corporate boards, or educational systems grants a specific group the leverage to steer the entire organization. By controlling the dominant faction within these pivotal structures, a group can effectively dictate policy, culture, and resource allocation for the entire population without needing total consensus. Maintaining control over a dominant narrative relies heavily on securing the trust and attention of the numerical majority through the strategic deployment of media, voice, video, and data. By aligning with the existing values of the populace or offering seemingly objective information, an influential entity can capture the collective focus of the masses, creating a psychological gateway akin to a Trojan horse. Once this access is secured, the narrative-shaping apparatus can subtly guide the collective subconscious processes of the population, steering public opinion and behavior without triggering overt resistance. Researchers and media scholars studying the deeper mechanisms of social engineering often compare this to historical psychological experiments, including Pavlovian conditioning and elements scrutinized under programs like MKUltra, where repeated stimuli and psychological conditioning were analyzed to alter human behavior. By applying these behavioral conditioning techniques on a macro scale, the underlying architecture of a society can be managed, effectively keeping the majority operating within an invisible, predefined rule set that dictates acceptable thought and action while maintaining the illusion of complete autonomy. Ultimately, for those seeking to implement systemic change or navigate the complexities of modern society, a comprehensive understanding of majority dynamics, human control systems, and organizational structures is essential. Power in the modern world is rarely decentralized evenly. Instead, it operates through both rigid hierarchical networks and complex distributed systems that rely on numerical leverage to maintain stability. Recognizing how these frameworks aggregate numbers to manufacture consent, enforce compliance, or command resources provides a foundational blueprint for analyzing global events. By mastering the concepts of how majorities are formed, maintained, and deployed across different sectors, individuals can better decipher the underlying mechanisms that drive human governance and global control.